sitting down with me this morning. Student success is what we'll discuss for this first panel, and that will be a running theme throughout the entire day. So let's settle in, learn something this morning. Good morning to you. Good morning, panelists. How are you this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning.
And now my cheat sheet here with the panelists it's off a bit, so I'm going to look down the line here, and I'll start with Representative Craig Horn of Union County. 3 terms now, correct?
Yes, sir.
Air Force veteran, former business owner, retired business owner, if you can be a retired business owner. Chairs Education Appropriations in the House Committee,
And,
K-12
correct.
education,
And program evaluation.
and program evaluation, the oversight committee that I've covered time and time again. Craig Horn from Union County, folks, state representative. Yeah, I will then look to Dr. Joan Perry, which I'm skipping around a bit. A pediatrician, adjunct clinical faculty member at UNC Chapel Hill School of Medicine, a member of our Board of Governors. You're active on that Board of Governors, leading an academic advising study committee. You sit on the personnel and tenure committees, and you serve as the elected secretary of the board. Thank you for your service. Adrienne Cole's the Vice President for Economic Development of the Raleigh Chamber of Commerce, and you're also the Executive Director of Wake County Economic Development, a graduate of Meredith College in Raleigh and Appalachian State University. Thank you for being on the panel this morning.
Thank you.
And closest to me is the Provost of Academic Affairs at North Carolina Central University, Johnson McKinley. Been around since January of 2014, 3 decades of higher education service. You have served in leadership at UNC Wilmington, Edwin Waters College, Bethune-Cookman University, and you begin your academic career on the faculty of Bowie State Communications. Thank you for teaching us communications grads for all those years. Let's start. I thought I had a softball question to start with. Representative Horn, who I'll start with you this morning. Student success means what? It sounds easy, and you tell me you struggled with this one last night.
I struggled mightily with this last night on my drive here as well from Charlotte. Concluded that student success is, as they say, like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. It's what's important to you. I think many of us listen to the same radio station, WIIFM, what's in it for me? So how do we respond? So student success can be defined from a variety, I think, of viewpoints. Student success for the teacher, student success for the parent, student success for industry, the employer. Oh yes, there's that part about student success for the student. So what is student success? And as I said, I've struggled with trying to come up with a definition that would be meaningful to all of those folks involved in this whole concept. Student success, I think, for me is readiness, the ability to take on a new challenge. Now that's measured perhaps by the university as graduation. It's measured, I suspect, by employers as ready to work, whatever that means. And it's measured by the parent as paid off the bill. But I do believe it comes back to readiness to participate in life, to participate in our government, to participate in our economy, to participate in our families, readiness to participate and an ability to adapt. So I think that's how I would probably define student success as tightly as I can define it.
And as a policymaker, you have the broad umbrella. You have to worry about lots of things.
And that's right. And as a policymaker, and I probably should have begun there, that's certainly where I'm going to end up. How do we policymakers define student success? And I think it's, to a certain extent, it's again that readiness, but it's also the efficient and effective application of the available dollars. That's what we do. Policymakers, in my view, by and large, we are Mr. Everyman. We represent, here in North Carolina, over 9 million people. So as Mr. Everyman, I've got to say, okay, what am I getting for what I'm paying? I have that obligation to be accountable to the taxpayer. What am I getting for what I'm paying? And I've got to be able to explain that in relevant terms to those 9.5 million people that, coming up here in a few weeks, we are going to be filing our income tax. Okay, where's that money going? And what am I getting for what I'm paying?
They'll be asking you that during the campaign season.
Oh, they certainly will. They certainly will.
Adrienne, you've got lots of experience in economic development, Chamber of Commerce. For you, I'm presuming it's business.
Right.
So what are employers out there paying for? And when they look at a student, what spells success when they're wading through those applications, particularly for the first time person kicking off their career?
Sure. And I agree that it's readiness. It is adaptability. Employers are, so let me back up and say, the number one driver for the companies that we are working with, whether they are contemplating a relocation into the state to set up a new operation or contemplating an expansion. So we very often compete for the expansions that we get in this area as well. The number one driver is talent, always, above everything else. Area development does a survey every year where they survey site selection consultants, but they also survey executives. And 92.9% of the respondents put talent as their number one driver, so availability of skilled labor. It is our primary currency in winning these projects, and there is a job war, or winning the job wars of the future is something that we focus on. So readiness is very important. Adaptability is important. Critical thinking. We're working more and more with our HR leaders in our corporations. In fact, we have a corporate talent task force that is meeting regularly in the Triangle, talking about what do they need in talent pipeline. So those things, team-based learning, being able to solve problems, being able to adapt in the workplace. You know, they're focused on not only being successful today, but how do they maintain that success going forward in the future? And they really are competing on a global stage for talent. And I will say that our universities and understanding the availability of talent coming from our universities, the ability to partner with our universities, continues to be extremely important for these companies. We very often bring faculty and deans from our universities to project visits to meet with folks who are exploring our area. And those are pivotal conversations, extremely important.
I'll follow up on that to ask you, because everyone here, as you heard in the introductory comments, student success is the number one goal. HR of private corporations are telling you what they want. You're telling the deans of the schools, these universities. How well is the pipeline getting down to the student, to my kid one day, to say, Eva, this is what you need to be doing. This is what we're looking for if you want to work in this market. How well is that working?
That's a great question. So we started the work in the Triangle Initiative in 2011, and that was really focused on recruitment and retention of talent. We've sort of moved into Talent 2.0, where we've got a lot more focus on pipeline. And we're not just talking pipeline through the university system, through our community colleges, but also pipeline going into K through 12 education. So we're working with our K through 12 school systems, really cataloging those programs available to help prepare students for post-high school diploma programs that get them prepared, workforce readiness, and pathways programs to future career choices. So we recognize that we have to really reach into K through 12 education to start setting the stage for those young people so that they know what the options are. A lot of our employers are focused on women in STEM, diversity in technology, those types of topics. So making sure that all students, regardless of where they come from, their background, what they look like, understand what the options are for them and have been exposed to that. My daughter, who's a middle schooler at Martin Middle, I have one in every grade. I've got an elementary school, I got a middle school, I got a high school, so we're sort of seeing the whole range. My daughter took a coding class. She had a group come in and teach coding. And she came home and she's like, it was awesome. And she'd never been exposed to that before. I don't know how to code. My husband doesn't know how to code. And so, exposing our students early to what the options are and then following up as they move through their career is going to be really important.
Dr. Perry, you're in an interesting place. Board of Governors, you're not quite a legislator. You can't file legislation and pass bills, but you get to spend time with legislators nonetheless, as well as with the business community and with the schools. Student success in this era of the transition the UNC system is going through, how would you define it from your perspective?
Well, let me just say, probably in this room, I am the ultimate newbie, as I have been on the board for 2 years and some months. It's like learning a new language to me. I've really enjoyed it. It has a very steep learning curve. But I bring to the board the perspective of a mom, a wife, a very active community member, a physician, a product of this system, and an adjunct faculty member. So when I was assigned this task of looking at student success, I thought, I'm going to ask some of these different populations that we should be concerned about what they think. And the first I turned to was my patients. I thought, what do students think? And much like Representative Horn said, of student success. And when I have a disrobed adolescent wrapped in a paper drape, I have a captive audience, and I always take advantage of it. So, I got answers like, well, of course, student success to me is graduating so I can be successful. Well, then I asked them to expound on that, and sometimes it's realistic and sometimes it's not. Others said an educational stepping stone to graduate school and a profession that I can really excel at. One college student told me that student success to them was stepping on that stage at commencement and say, Mom and Dad, I did it. Now, talking to parents, of course, you get mixed definitions as well, but mostly they're off the payroll. That's student success. Or self-discovery and mastery, or purposeful and fulfilling employment. And as a parent, I understand that. Administrators, I ask, what do you think of when you first think of student success? And I very often heard retention, completion, or retention and completion. As I'm sorting through this, I'm thinking about the way that we see the student part of student success change over the past 5 to 10 years. And I know you will understand this even better than we do in terms of the older student, in terms of the increased number of transfers, in terms of the military and veterans, in terms of student with a lot of debt. And I think this really has to factor into what we consider to be student success. Even the new freshmen don't look like they used to, They're quite different. They're all tech savvy. Many have had dual credit hours in high school for college. So, diverse backgrounds, and with those diverse backgrounds, so many different needs that we've never really had to address before. And I think all of these lead to a different dynamic on the campus that we have to look at when we're thinking about student success. So I suppose really the traditional metric of completion or graduation is still there. I think too we're looking at employment rates and salaries. But for me, I would have to say that student success is about acquiring knowledge and skills that lead to a productive life. Productive in terms of vocation, professions, and careers that contribute to economic success. Productive in terms of social and civic and community engagement. And just as important to me as the vocational training is the development of interpersonal and social and emotional intelligence that's really needed to navigate life. Most of us, I think, in this room chose the occupations we've chosen because we want to make a difference in someone's life. And I'm convinced that participating in the life of a university student is one of the most rewarding jobs that you can ever have. Because I really believe education is transformative. And I think somewhere in that definition of student success, we have to embrace the transformation of the individual that will take place in the family. I was just marveling at someone in our community 2 years ago that graduated from community college at age 72. And just to think about how some may say, well, that's a wasted investment. But, you know, no one else in that family and the generation that followed her had ever been to college. So transformative just for the individual, but also for the family, for the community, for the state, and for the nation. So that's what I would have to say.
When you were talking to those ordinary families out there, and you started learning there's veteran success, there's the high debt load success, how many different aspects of success do you think could pop out of a discussion on student success? Because I have to say, I'm biased. I think high school senior, college freshman, you get 4.5, 5 years, depending on what your degree will be in, and that is success. But you just hit the nail on the head. Veterans coming in midlife, retirees going in. How hard will it be to corral this in to define student success when students are so different than they've ever been?
It's very diverse, and we have to be sensitive to that.
Fair enough. Provost, you're in the trenches, on the campuses.
Absolutely.
On the campus, dealing with students one-on-one. You see success, and you probably deal with a fair amount of failure as well based on how students behave on campuses. What's it like out there? How are you defining success these days? 2016, we'll keep the calendar right there.
Thank you so much. I have to make a disclosure first. My chancellor was supposed to be here this morning on this panel. Due to conflicting schedules on campus, she couldn't make it, so she's asked me to be here on her behalf, and she sends her regrets. Before I delve into that question, I'd like to borrow a phrase from Henry Ford, and, who says, coming together is the beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. For many times on our campuses, provosts and chancellors and presidents, we have gotten so caught up into the question of access. And then, of course, we talk about enrollment, we talk about head counts, we talk about enrollment funding. We're so concerned about those type of data, so much so that we forget the key element, which is student success. And policymakers, in fact, are well ahead of us in that conversation because now we live in that era of accountability. And so the question then becomes, what is and what should we be on our campuses be focused upon? So it's incumbent upon presidents and chancellors to begin to try to help our institutions to make the shift from access, enrollment, headcount to completion, particularly for students of color, minority, and how do we address completion? And of course, many of the things that have been mentioned here really speak to that. Now, your question is, on our campus, what do we see every day with students in terms of success? As we've said earlier, you cannot just measure success with one sort of lens. On our campus, we have a number of stakeholders that must participate in that. When we bring the students in, we have to talk about their first year experience, progression, creating pathway for them. And so in the path to that graduation, there's a number of obstacles and problems that we have to look into and that we have to be able to solve. And I will use that to pivot to the use of data. And this is what we have not done very well on our campuses. Using data to understand and to highlight those obstacles that students go through towards that completion path. And so what are some of those obstacles? You've heard of the question of retention, attrition, and what are the contributors to that. So on our campuses, we have to use data to figure out why are students leaving? Why are they dropping out? Why aren't they taking enough courses? per semester? What have we put in our curriculum that impedes, that progress? How are we training our faculty? How do we get our faculty to come on board and to understand the shift in looking at and digging into data? What we've done on our campus for the last 2 years, led by our chancellor, is to begin to really actually dig deeper into the data that we have on our campus, to begin to disaggregate and to find out the answers to those questions that we see every day. Issues that prevent our students from being able to make that progress, whether it's inside the classroom or outside of the classroom. On our campus, we have probably roughly 60% of our students who engage in half-time employment of the campus. Why? We have to answer that question in that path to defining what success is. And how do we assist them? Whether it's in the package of their financial aid, whether it's in terms of what is available to them, whether it's in the design of our curriculum, whether it's in looking at courses where create bottlenecks, we have to be able to determine that. So there are some cognitive and non-cognitive factors that tend to impede success on our campus. But I would say that if I were to give it a simple definition on our campus, I would say that, success is everyone's business on our campus. And chancellors and president, we must be able to provide an environment that allow, our stakeholders on campus to understand that and to know that, it is not just what happens in the classroom, it is what happens entirely on the campus, and in fact, what happens outside of the classroom as well.
But I see policymakers, legislators, they look at the bottom line, retention rates, graduation rates, dropout rates, maybe debt load now. If it's all statistics. And I remember university, being in the UNC system, as being one of the most personal experiences of my life. And the campus was so big. How do you prevent or how do you avoid becoming so impersonal using data to talk about students' lives that you lose concept of that student is struggling and I don't know why, but this one is succeeding and I want to learn why?
Well, that's a very good question, in fact, and I don't mean that, we have to be so focused on data that we lose that personal touch, because the personal touch is also very important to our students. There are some things that you cannot see in data. Oftentimes we have students who have issues at home, and they bring that to campus, and you can't easily dissect that. So that's where personal touch comes in. And so through our advisors, our career counselors, we want folks who can really engage the students and help to figure out what are the other issues that are affecting them outside of, their performance in the classroom and their progression. And so we have to also create an environment where there is a personal touch with our students, where we really get to know them. And many of us are beginning to now develop peer-to-peer, student-to-student mentoring, where students get to know you and they can begin to discuss those type of issues that also impact their performance on campus.
Ms. Cole, we're going to do, the order we'll go is if Mr. Horn was first, you'll be last on this question. We'll snake around, if you will, so the way I do political debates. But Ms. Cole, as of right now, how are current higher ed policies? How are they getting balanced against what it means, if I want to say this correctly, what it means to earn a college degree this day and age? You read papers, some people don't believe the university degree is what it needs to be successful.
Right.
I was to go to university if I could, no matter what. My mother drilled that in me. That seems to be a little different these days. How are the policies of how you see the system and the education policies, how are they interacting with your ability to find that successful student that your clients, that your colleagues want to hire?
Right. So that's a complicated question. But I really, from my vantage point in working with employers, it depends on the employer and the types of positions that they are trying to fill. I will tell you that we tout the educational attainment in Raleigh and the Triangle regularly as a differentiator for our market. So Raleigh alone has between 47 and 49% of folks with a bachelor's degree or higher. And if you take that down to some level of college degree or higher, it goes up to 58.5%. And that is that rivals the Bostons, the San Jose's, the Silicon Valleys, the Washington, D.C.s. And it matters to companies that we're able to provide those statistics and they're able to find the talent that they're looking for, that they know have that base education, whether it's in specific skill sets. Some are looking for data analysts, others are looking for people with finance, others in healthcare, whatever it is, they know that they're starting with that basic understanding that they are then going to be able to build upon, that they have those critical thinking skills, that they've done some team-based learning, that they are adaptable and teachable, and that is really important in their decision to locate in our market. I mean, we tend to punch above our weight. I'm competing against Austin and Boston and Silicon Valley and Switzerland, and every day. I mean, we have 40 active projects considering Wake County right now. That there's a lot of jobs on the line and a lot of investment. And as I said before, their number one driver is talent, and one of the metrics they look at is degree attainment. They're also looking at the programs of our community college system. It's important that they're hiring folks that either have the basic skill sets that they're looking for and also the ability to learn and adapt within their system. And then we also have programs like Assist and BTech and the Freedom Systems Center that are providing real partnerships with industry. The Nonwovens Institute at NC State, where industry is able to partner directly with the universities to make sure that they're getting the talent that they need. It's critically important.
At the university level, with those who educate, provost, higher level leaders in the university system, how well do you think the concept is grasped that a product of their teaching and their campus environment is, they're pitting themselves against Silicon Valley? If they're raising North Carolina's next group of leaders, but they go to California, is that a well-grasped concept? I presume it is, but I want to ask you from the business perspective, how strong is that pull, do you think, from the universities to create students who are highly trained, but yet who stay in North Carolina because they are a project of our system?
Right. I've not done a survey or a poll, but certainly the faculty members who we have the privilege of working with when we're recruiting projects are really invested in our success and our ability to win that project and to put those people to work in North Carolina. And I'll also tell you that I've done economic development in the state for about 20 years. I'm from Craven County, and I started my career in Pamlico County, where the work of the Pamlico County Community College and ECU were very, very important. I then ran the Economic Development Council in Carteret County, where, again, Carteret Community College and the work of East Carolina, but then also there, UNC and State, because of their facilities on the coast, were really important as we were starting to grow and identify and put our arms around a marine biotech cluster, and then also how we were supporting the boat manufacturing industry there and the marine industry there. So, every community in North Carolina is unique and has to have unique economic development strategies. But the universities and the community college system is really, really important to the, and pivotal to that strategy. When I came to Raleigh, we, of course, partner a lot with NC State. We also work with UNC. I think that the faculty that I've been able to work with understands that what they are doing is important to our success in recruiting jobs and putting North Carolinians to work and also retaining the talent for the state.
Dr. Perry, I will say, being a new member in the university system as a board of governors, you do bring new ideas. Say you're a newbie, you're not. You're very well experienced. At that 20,000-foot view in this, there's a value of getting a college education and those higher education policies that empower our faculty to make sure these students are successful. How well are those two in line right now from what you have seen from the experiences you've had on the Board of Governors? Are the policies setting up our faculty to succeed who then set the student up for career success?
Well, I think we've well defined student success as one of our top priorities, and President Spellings continues to come back to that. I think as I look at it, I look at student success as a developmental pediatrician on a progressive sort of continuum, starting really from pre-enrollment through the first, through enrollment, through the first couple of years where we see retention as such an issue, then into the latter years where we're putting the students out now for more hands-on opportunities, into graduation. And we're beginning to sort of zero in on some of those areas where policy changes can really be advantageous to what you're just speaking about. I think that we've got to make more strategic investments in terms of having the right people in the right places and leveraging technology. And I think sometimes when we think about this progressive model, we really need to think about it as focusing on the individual students. Rather than be institutional-centric, I think we have to be more student-centric, just as we were speaking earlier about the diversity. And if we're reaching back in the pipeline to bring in more diverse students, which we're going to have to do, I mean, the demographics tell us we have to do that, then we're really going to have to make our education and our student success more student-centric. And I think to do that, we many times think about dollar signs involved in implementing those kinds of policies. But I think if we're looking at the right people in the right places and leveraging some amount of technology correctly, for example, I enjoyed reading a book recently by, many of you may know, Benjamin Castleman from UVA, who has deployed texting programming and technology to reach out to students. And in that population has had quite a profound impact on summer melt and retention. So technology doesn't always have to be the flashiest and the nicest and the most expensive to be effective. So I think there's some ways that we can continue to zero in. I think even just recently, our budget priorities reflected our interest in zeroing in on that student success. Just in the first year, course enhancements, course redesign, expansion of first-year seminars, new Jumpstart programs for the summer, and one of my favorites, learning communities that have really shown to have high-impact results that are yielding a significant outcome.
Provost, to build upon that point, those policies that center everything towards student success, can you get that done at the university campus, at the campus level, as a leader at that level, or is it a Board of Governors directive? What's the best way to sync up policy with student success, which means a degree from the UNC system really means something, most importantly, a job when I walk across that aisle?
Well, that's a great question. And I think we have to do something at both levels, even at the policy level. We, first of all, have to try to help our policymakers to understand the prevailing environment on our campuses. In other words, what are those things that prevent us from being able to do those things that they expect us to do? So that there has to be that understanding from the policymakers first. And of course, when those policies are made, coming to our campus as provosts and chancellors, then we have to help to create an environment and provide, in most cases, as you've said, Dr. Perry, many of these things do require resources, but they're not entirely new resources. We have to be innovative, we have to be creative, and some of them will simply require, reallocation of our existing resources to make things happen. You talk about technology. We have to use technology more in engaging our students in advisement. There are so many ways we can do that. We have mobile devices now, we have so many devices now that we can begin to make that personal touch with our students in providing adequate, advising for them so that they don't fall through the cracks. That's right. So on our campuses, again, I'm looking at Provost Arden here. We are making progress in so many areas in helping to understand, have our faculty to understand the shift, in really making that cultural shift. I spoke about data earlier. We have to begin to use data to effect different outcomes in our students so that we can be adaptable to what the industry needs, the redesign of our curriculum so that our students can be market ready when they graduate. We were kidding around that, in these days you go through a school of business and we have to engage the corporate world in the design of our curriculum so that the learning outcomes that we get will be the learning outcomes that would have those students to be market ready the first that they go to work. Then, of course, there is the question of soft skills. You know, many industry experts are telling us now that, you know, not only do we need students who are skilled in a specific discipline, we also want them to have certain soft skills like leadership. And so these are things that we have to look at into infusing into our curriculum so that when they are hired, they can be flexible, they can be versatile, and they can do what. And the question of keeping them in the state, this is where we would need help from our policymakers. We have to create an environment that allows the industry in the states to be competitive out of the states, particularly when you talk about programs like teacher education. We talk about pay. I mean, people think pay isn't important. It is important. You know, if we're going to retain teachers in the state, we have to make our entry salaries attractive and so much so livable wages, I would say, so that, you know, the other states would not begin to recruit our teachers. So at the state level, at the level of the policymakers, this is where we would need your help, certainly.
You mentioned reallocation of resources that are already existing at the campus level. I know you can only speak for your campus. Is that where the job gets done for student success when you, of course, everyone likes new and increased funding. It's impossible. It never happens politically. So can you get it done by reallocating what you have? How far can you get and how far are you in that process?
Well, you know, we can go a long way because to secure new funding in this environment is very difficult. And so we are learning very fast that, you know, we have to do more in looking at particularly other innovative ways, that shared resources, being more efficient with our resources, you know, preventing waste, and so many other ways that we can create, you know, additional resources, then use those resources to do the things that we wanted to do without looking for new funding. So we've begun to do that, and we are working very hard in that area. And of course, the other aspect is really also creating an environment on our campus that encourages our faculty to engage in sponsored research so that we don't rely entirely on state funding. If we can create opportunity for faculty to have startup funds, to write grants, to do that, we can then generate more funding to our institutions and of course use those indirect funds to redirect to the things that we wanted to do that are priorities for us on our campuses.
Representative Horn, you hear it, we're emotionally attached to universities and colleges, whether private or public, but it is business. Policy is business. How well is it, in your opinion, is higher ed's policies right now, as they're managing this whole system, how well is it matching up to the value of earning a UNC degree? And that would be at any of the campuses that you see. Is it meshing up well? Is there work to do, or have I just put you in a jam here?
Well, Kelly, I'm not surprised you'd put me in a jam. Is it working well? Again, that's back to that beauty part. It's eyes of the beholder. Are we able to tell the taxpayer, here's what you're getting for what you're paying? Several things strike me as I listen to my fellow panelists on this particular issue. Among those are, as we all know, in education, everything works for someone, nothing works for everyone. So how do we make that determination? This isn't working. We need to reallocate those resources because you know perfectly well that for someone it is working. And those people are going to say, oh, no, you can't do that. We've got to keep that. Well, isn't it wonderful to be all things to all people? Doesn't work, but it's a great idea. A couple of other things strike me. We talked about teacher prep and technology and things like that. We know that kids today, frankly, they're wired differently than you and I are. Even though, sadly, I'm old enough to be your father. I'm here, I'm 72 years old, anxious to learn a lot more. I've got grandchildren in college, and I've watched very carefully to see how they learn and what is it I expect from them, or what do they expect from themselves. A couple of other things kind of jumped off the page to me as I listened to my fellow panelists here. And that preparing students for success, and we've talked about what does that mean. I relate to an opportunity I once had to chat with an older man that was actually on Omaha Beach on D-Day, on the German side. And he said, Mr. Horn, there's actually no reason for you Americans to have been successful on D-Day. No, we had the high ground, we had better training, shorter supply lines, superior weapons, great discipline. Do you know why you were successful? Because the average American fighting man said, this isn't working, we gotta do something else. And we did. We adapted. Because we prepared our kids to adapt. I think that's our challenge today, and I think we are, I'm going to say we're beginning to live up to that challenge. And the reason I say that, and rather than we are living up to that challenge, is because of this changing environment on how kids are wired, how they learn. The reality is that the kids know more about how to use this kind of thing than do the teachers. The teachers know more about how to use this thing than do the teachers teaching the teachers to be teachers. We've got the paradigm upside down, and we need to make that adjustment. We tend to, it seems to me, we tend to teach school as though the internet does not exist. It's not just knowledge anymore. It's the ability to access knowledge. That's a new paradigm for an old guy like me. Trying to figure out, how do I deal with that, and are we providing our students with those tools to challenge them and to encourage them to question? We've all had, many of us have had 2-year-olds that every sentence of ours is met by why from them. We need to be asking why to a much greater extent and holding each other to a high standard. And I'll wrap up by saying that unquestionably, our university system in this North Carolina, it's the pride of our state. I was just in Tennessee over the weekend. I spoke in Franklin, Tennessee. And we talked, there are some folks there from Vanderbilt, UT, others, and we talked about our wonderful university system. And I keep saying, okay, how are we going to keep this up? And is it just the money? Really? Is it just the money?
Well,
No.
is it just the money?
And the answer is, of course not. It's the application of the money. How do we get there? And we get there by ensuring that we engage in this conversation, that we challenge each other, that we accept nothing as fact. Now, it was mentioned about use of data. Here's my problem with the use of data as a legislator. Data is yesterday's news, trying to face tomorrow's challenges. Well, what got us here will not get us there. I'm told that 60% of the kids graduating from high school this year will be doing a job that has not yet been invented. How do we prepare kids for a job that has not yet been invented? We also know, practically, pretty much no one ends up doing what they started out to do. I graduated from high school, joined the military, I was a Russian linguist. Okay, connect those dots. So how are we going to do this? And it begins with this this opportunity to share ideas and to challenge each other and to stop throwing rocks, because that's not doing us any good at all. We need to have a grasp of vision. We need to grasp the vision. Now, I'm reminded as a kid, many of us had comic books. And in a comic book, pretty much every comic book and in Sunday comic pages, there's that silly little thing where there's the cheese and the mouse. And we tell the kids, take them, put your pencil on the mouse and take it to the cheese. and you have all kinds of problems with that. But kid pretty quickly discovers that if you start with the cheese, it's a whole lot easier to get back to the mouse. Let's start with the vision. Let us create that shared vision. Where are we going? We know, we've all heard that phrase, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Well, where is there? Let us come together. And in this environment, this is what we're doing today, as well as what I'm listening to. Okay, tell me what you think my role should be. Is it just the money? No, it's not just the money. And that's what I've heard from you all, and that's what I'm trying to take away from here as well. I think that's an important piece of the discussion.
Dr. Perry, I'll follow up on Representative Horn. What should the role be? I read the newspapers like everybody else. Sometimes it gets a little contentious.
You think?
I can't have an opinion on that. I'll tell you April 29th. To shift gears towards, students have an expectation of what they think it means to get a college degree. The university has an expectation of what they want their students to become. From your view, how in sync is that? From your conversations with everyday people, is what the student expects their experience to be the same as what the university system expects the outcome and the experience to be for that same student?
Well, I'd like to think that to some extent the students' vision is going to be changing as they go through this process. I think that in regard to Representative Horn, I think doing this is what we need to do. I think that I am not an expert in higher education, but I do bring the perspective of constituencies of our state that have their stakeholders in this, as you do actually. And so I think when we talk to you, as you are the one with the checkbook, as you say, I think we need each other. And I think we need input from you all to be making these decisions, because you guys are where the rubber meets the road. Right. And I think it cannot be a unilateral process. So, yes.
Do you, from the Board of Governors, in your personal perspective, have you seen a lot of unilateral action in recent months or years that would give you that opinion? Or is it more of a fear that that's what it could become, a silo where edicts and funding and mandates are passed down through you to administer to the universities?
Right. I think we're getting better at that. And I think now, with finally our new leadership straight, I think we're going to be moving in the right direction. It is our intention to reach out to the legislature and to you all as well to really put these places, the right policies in the right place.
I want to ask you about the speed of obtaining a college degree or university degree, because you've brought up the journey of a student. You come in, you're a kid, never lived by yourself, you get thrown in a dorm. It's scary and it's fun at the same time. But every semester that clocks off, if you don't know what you're doing, you're likely causing either yourself to pile on debt or your parents who receive that bill to go, wow, okay, this is a real investment.
Sure.
How much leeway should these folks give a student to, quote, find their way? Because it really is a meter and it's very expensive to get a degree. How well prepared should that student be coming in first day?
These folks are the kingpins in this discussion. You know, they are one of the crucial intersections of this student's trajectory through the system. So, in fact, that's the reason that we became interested in the advising group. As we began to look at student success generally, we thought, well, let's start with advising. Because who can better direct a student than someone who's equipped with the talents and skills that these folks are? So I think that they are crucial. I think we need to continue to back them up as we have with the budget priorities, to enable them to assist students, and that's going to require some money as we have designated. But I think also we have to do everything possible to motivate students to use you guys. I think I'm spending all my life thinking about motivation. You know, my own motivation coming up through my education, then the motivation of my husband after I got married, how to motivate him, then how to motivate my children. And now, you know, we're talking about how to motivate young adults and even older adults to some extent as they enter the higher ed landscape. So we can have the best advising or the best student success measures in place, but unless the students are motivated to take advantage of it, they're going to continue to use time and years and money unnecessarily. So we really feel like focusing on student success is so crucial to this discussion of time to degree.
Provost, how do you see that at your level with students coming in? I mean, it can be a journey, but it's an expensive one. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think the question of student preparedness, it's a very key question and it's very important. But I think that there has to be a working relationship between the higher education and K through 12. Oftentimes, there isn't a synergy there. And so that the students who are coming to us oftentimes are as you do know, not all well prepared to pursue the rigors of higher education. So we have to go beyond just abstract, relationship. We really have to engage our faculty at the higher education level and the faculty at through K through 12 in curriculum design, in program exchanges, and in developing learning outcomes in a number of courses, particularly those courses that do transfer to us, so that when students come to us, we're not necessarily just relying on the SAT and the GPA. So there is a real intervention between our faculty in making sure that the curriculum is strong and it's one that aligns with the higher education curriculum. So again, as someone mentioned earlier here, it takes a village. I think there has to be a working together and through the entire community, at the legislative level, at the policymakers level, at the institutional level, and of course, the K through 12 level, if we're going to really achieve student success.
What does it do to you? I mean, you're as a professional, you're proud of your campus, to a student is accepted and they aren't ready, and that's a lost semester. And we're talking about a very personalized environment. If you dive into data, it doesn't matter, they're just a number.
Right.
We're talking about human beings. What does it do to you?
Well, it's very painful, and it's something that is on our minds, particularly, and I hate to keep emphasizing, this is for all students, particularly students of color and minority students who come to us again with a number of deficiencies from home, non-cognitive factors that we really have to work with to help them to assimilate into the culture of higher education. First-generation college students, there has to be an environment that helps them to understand the rigors of higher education and what needs to be done for them to be successful. Many of these students are not just not prepared, but because they don't have certain life skills when they come to us, that oftentimes work against them. And so our role now as an academic institution goes beyond what we provide in the classroom. We have to find means to assist the students in the other ways that we've described in order to make them successful.
Representative Horn, the expectation, a student can set their own expectations, a university can set expectations on the student. I'm not sure of the balance on that. These are young adults that can make their own minds up. How do you see that? Because we're publicly funded and tuition bills go to the parents, if not, or debt. Balance this out. Can the university look down and go, young person, this is what we expect of you when you arrive on our campus?
The universities certainly deserve and need to know what the objective is from, as far as what objective or what's expected of them by policymakers. Let's be clear to them, and we haven't been. That's part of the problem with this, with the system of government we have, where allegedly we govern by consent of the governed, but the governed half the time doesn't really see the big picture. They're very concerned with what's right in front of them at the moment. So we end up with policy whiplash, which is, we all know, incredibly detrimental to our ability to succeed because it discourages all of us. We don't know what the rules are. And unfortunately, our legislators are not particularly well prepared for these challenges. There's no requirement to be a legislator. I remind people all the time, there's no requirement to be me. Stand outside and hold up a sign, send out a few mailers, shake a few hands, and then you come to Raleigh and it's, oh my goodness, really? I've got to deal with whether we should use cement or macadam. I've got to deal with Medicaid. I've got to, oh yes, there's that university. So, oh my goodness. Oh, but Kate, so how do we, in this political environment, and I'm not just talking about the current political environment, but how we choose to govern ourselves, how do we come to some cohesive conclusion and provide the kind of direction that we all know is important, but 120 members of the House, 50 members of the Senate, there's 170, and oh yeah, there's that guy down the street called the governor. That means we got to get 61 people in one house, 26 people in another. Are you kidding me, really? And we're gonna govern this way? But as Churchill himself once said, democracy is the worst form of government ever conceived by man, except for every other kind that's been tried from time to time. So would we trade it out? No, but we need to make it more efficient. We need to make it better. So how do we get there? We need we need clear direction from you. Here's what we want to do and why. Here's the accountability piece of that. We need the public to be more involved and demand more of us as legislators, and the legislators need to get out from behind their desks and get out in the classroom and in the schools every day and find out about that part where the rubber meets the road. As they say, God gave us one mouth and two ears, and there's a message there. But we aren't always listening because we're taken up with the issue du jour. Or in fact, it's not the issue of the day, it's the issue of the moment. And we hear from that noisy small group that always tells us, well, we represent the majority, when we need to settle down and provide you with the kind of direction, but you need to provide us with the kinds of questions for us to answer. Because if you're depending on us to both ask the question and answer it, you're not going to get what you need.
Ms.
Thank you.
Ms. Cole, I won't throw the last question to you. It's been a great discussion, but university has expectations, students have expectations. They can be different. And then there's the employer who will review the application of the new graduate, and they have maybe the most important expectation they apply to an applicant. Mm-hmm. How well are they matching up policy-wise and real-world-wise?
Right. So it's a great question. And again, every employer is different in terms of what they're looking for, but they are expecting a skilled workforce. They are expecting students who are ready to go to work and who are nimble and adaptable and have solid communication skills and soft skills, they were mentioned earlier, critical thinking skills, and the ability to grow in their role, because change is happening quickly. And so how they're doing their job today is not how they're going to do their job in 5 years. And so, or even 2 years sometimes. My team, I am fortunate to work with with a really talented team, but several of them are recent college grads. And they come to me and they say, Adrienne, I think we need to do this thing. And I go, I didn't know that was a thing, but it sounds like a good thing, so go do that thing. So, things are changing. And so our employers are expecting a workforce that not only has solid skills in whatever it is that they do, whether it's biotechnology or data analytics or what have you, but also has the ability to be a continuous learner, a good communicator, a good team member, a good collaborator. A lot of what I'm hearing from the panel today is about communication and collaboration. And our employers have that same expectation.
Panel, thank you so much for answering my questions, following up. Much appreciated.
It's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much.